And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a protector. So God made a fighter.
In a new campaign ad that, in a more rational world, would anger religious conservatives, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is depicted as a fighter sent by the Christian God to defend the downtrodden. When I first saw this on Twitter, a lot of more progressive voices were disgusted by it, for obvious reasons besides that it was just about Ron DeSantis. DeSantis is not a gift from God. But they were also shocked that DeSantis was getting away with this, because shouldn't religious conservatives be upset that he's pretending God sent him on earth Jesus style to fight on God's behalf? Is God so weak that he can't get things done without DeSantis on his side? Seems kind of blasphemous. You would never see a Democrat doing that, or at least getting away with it. I also don't think a lot of people understood that this ad didn't just spring up out of nowhere. It's based on a speech that has become pretty famous in conservative circles over the years. About that. In 1978, a conservative radio broadcaster named Paul Harvey delivered a speech to the future farmers of America. His goal was to tell them how amazing they are, so he gave a speech called So God Made a Farmer.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer.
The gist was that God wanted someone who could do lots of work, impact local government, help his neighbors, go to church, and essentially be a real-life Norman Rockwell character. Therefore, he said, God made farmers.
When his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does, so God made a farmer.
City folks just don't get it.
To be clear, lots of people who are not farmers do all those things too. And going to church doesn't make you a good person. But Paul Harvey knew where his honorarium was coming from here. Not a bad way to suck up to that particular audience. I mean, he has a very specific idea of what every farmer is like that I find just bizarre. It's about as narrow-minded as thinking every family in the 1950s lived like the family in Leave It to Beaver.
Girls are kinda lucky, don't they, Mom? They don't have to be smart. They don't have to get jobs or anything. All they gotta do is get married.
But conservatives love thinking that every happy family is identical, and all the good people are farmers, and everyone can pay for everything if they just work hard, and everyone is white. Anyway, the DeSantis team took that script, changed farmer to fighter, modified the rest of the script accordingly, and painted DeSantis as if he were a conservative culture warrior / American savior.
God said, I need someone to be strong, advocate truth in the midst of hysteria, someone who challenges conventional wisdom and isn't afraid to defend what he knows to be right and just.
But even if you know the reference, it's still a weird ad.
God said, I need somebody who will take the arrows, stand firm in the wake of unrelenting attacks.
DeSantis paints himself as God's gift to humanity. Can you imagine if Joe Biden released a similar ad?
Give me a break. That's a bunch of malarkey.
Every white evangelical pastor and Fox anchor and local right-wing radio host would never stop whining about it.
But Joe Biden really has crossed over into a very dangerous place.
Democrats could never get away with this. It's just a complete double standard. It's also a ridiculous ad because of all the ways you could describe Ron DeSantis, fighter isn't one of them. Any fighter worth admiring is someone who isn't afraid to put his own body or reputation on the line because he or she is pushing back against people who are more powerful and pose a real threat to others. Whenever we think of fighting in a good way, it's because people are fighting for civil rights against those who want to oppress them, or they're fighting for a righteous cause. or they're fighting in some struggle. Those are the fighters we admire. No one builds a statue to the tyrants whose fight in life involves making others suffer. Unless you're a fan of the Confederacy, which, in the case of DeSantis, well, you know. But DeSantis is not a fighter. He's a coward who goes after marginalized communities in order to receive praise from his right-wing echo chamber. He's not a fighter. He's a guy who bullies trans kids, uses taxpayer dollars to add to the suffering of refugees trying to escape persecution, punishes the Special Olympics for prioritizing safety measures during a pandemic, arrests people for voting, even though they were told they could, promotes conservative Christian indoctrination in public school classrooms, and attacks Disney for kinda supporting LGBTQ rights. Disney! If he's a fighter, ask yourself, who exactly is he fighting? Because he ain't fighting Trump, or his own Republican Party, or the wealthy donors who fuel his campaign. He's not a fighter. He's a professional asshole who represents the epitome of white evangelical Christian and conservative Catholic rage. He'll use their rhetoric to hurt as many people outside their club as possible, all while being hailed as a hero by the people who always claim moral superiority over everyone else. He's not a fighter. He's a walking advertisement for why decent humans should ditch the Republican Party at every level, along with organized religion, no matter the flavor. DeSantis doesn't know how to fight because he has no principles to fight for. All he has is the power of his office, one that he won by a razor-thin majority. And he's using that to wage wars against everyone who's critical of him. Whatever happens with his political career, he'll never be remembered as a fighter. He'll be remembered as a guy who got away with all kinds of dipshittery because the conservative religious zealots in his corner never had the courage to defend the least of these. Their only belief is that their combination of money and power gives them the right to harass and harm anyone they deem not Christian enough. And nothing Jesus ever supposedly said will change their views on that. Defending the least of these, by the way, is a biblical principle, but the people who claim God is on their side never seem to care about what their holy book actually says. You know what else you won't hear? Complaints from conservative Christians about this use of God as a political endorser because they have no principles either. The rules they live by are always different from the ones they demand of everyone else. If people treated them the way they treat everyone else, they couldn't handle it. They would whine even more than they do right now.
There are no Protestants on the court. There are no evangelicals on the court. The elites on the court look over much of this country as flyover country.
They say they're persecuted, but there isn't a single group in America these white conservative Christians would ever want to switch places with. And yet they have the audacity to think they're the fighters. No, they're the bullies. Those of us who push back against them, we're the fighters.